Welcome to Engedrian. If this is your first time listening, or even if you are returning, be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you are enjoying our adventure. Let's see what happens next. Lacking any magical talent or clandestine connections with the natural world, Case wanders the upper platform, observing all of the activity below. As he gets to the 3/4 of the way around mark of the upper platform, he sees several fighters with weapons fighting quite aggressively a few tiers down. He smiles and ventures to the platform. Once there, he sees a minotaur with a large battle axe and a half-ogre with a giant club dueling. The half-ogre is on the offensive, swinging quickly and wildly, but misses. The minotaur swings its battle axe down hard on the half-ogre's back, and a loud, low tone erupts from above. The minotaur glows green, and the half-ogre glows red. Case squints a bit and scratches his chin. The half-ogre stands up, unharmed and laughing. The minotaur is also laughing, and they shake hands. The minotaur walks away from the middle of the platform towards Case and waves him over.
The bones of your ancestors are strong, Dark One. I am Garkon Singleheart, champion of Rockbane, Cath of Asperia.
The minotaur bows slightly.
Case Amberdream of the Pride of Jerimond, Savannah of Theros.
Case bows as well.
Tell me, friend, what is this all about?
Case points to the place where the fight occurred.
We are without magic, but the temple holds something for everyone. In that place, you can attack each other as viciously as you like. The better you strike, the louder the sound, the brighter the red. That last strike was a chilling blow, but we are unharmed. Would you like to try?
The minotaur stands with his battle axe on the floor, his hands resting on the handle.
May I request that we fight without weapons?
Case looks at the half-ogre's club with sharp spikes protruding from the end and the razor-sharp blade of the battle axe.
You can request any fight you like.
Garkon smiles broadly and slightly nods his head.
Just walk up to whomever you like to fight and challenge them with your requests.
Then I challenge you, Garkon, no weapons.
Garkon smiles, nods, and places his battle axe on a bench and walks into the ring. Case places his longsword and spear on the same bench and joins him. Case and Garkon roll for initiative. Garkon attacks with an unarmed strike, rolls 11 for a miss. Garkon, used to his heavy battle axe, throws a clumsy punch at Case, which flies past his snout. Case manifests an echo behind Garkon, attacks with unarmed strike, unleashes Incarnation for second unarmed strike from Echo, rolls 18 versus armor class 14 for 12 bludgeoning damage, rolls 19 versus armor class 14 for 12 bludgeoning damage. Case bumps his fists together, and a silent, gray echo of himself appears behind Garkon, unknown to the Minotaur. Case swings with his fist, landing a solid punch on the Minotaur's steel jaw, followed by the echo repeating the swing into Garkon's ribs. A low, slightly loud hum erupts from above, and Garkon's jaw and side glow a light red color. Garkon stands up straight and looks over his shoulder at the echo and smiles.
My turn.
Garkon uses Gore Attack, rolls 26, natural 20 for 18 damage. Garkon drops his head and charges his horns towards Case's chest, striking him just above both ribs. Another slightly low hum erupts from above, and Case's chest glows slightly red. Case is amazed that he felt nothing, but steps back and looks at his chest. He looks up and smiles. Case teleports to the location of his echo, makes an unarmed attack, then an unleashed manifestation attack. Rolls 17 for 10 bludgeoning damage, and 19 for 6 bludgeoning damage. Case slides his claws across his paws and then turns his paws to align his claws, teleporting to the location of his echo and the echo appearing in front of the Minotaur. He swings for the same spot on Garkon's ribs while the echo repeats the punch to the face. Again, a low, slightly loud hum erupts from above, and Garkon's jaw and side glow a light red color. Garkon smirks and turns in place to face Case. Garkon uses an action surge, makes an unarmed strike, makes a gore attack, rolls 10 for a miss, and 20 for a hit for 14 piercing damage. Garkon throws his shoulders back and roars, and swings with a wide fist at Case's face, missing him and dropping his head. Garkon suddenly jerks his head upward, scoring another strike to Case's chest. The low hum is now louder and erupts from above, and Case's chest glows a little more brightly red. Case uses Action Surge, makes 2 unarmed strikes and 2 unleashed manifestation attacks. Bonus action takes Second Wind. Rolls 18 for 6 bludgeoning damage, 23 for 8 bludgeoning damage, 26 critical for 20 bludgeoning damage, and 20 for 9 bludgeoning damage. Case follows Garkon's example and throws his own shoulders back, then makes 2 rapid punches which are matched by his echo, striking Garkon 4 times. The noise from above is almost deafening, and Garkon's entire body glows very brightly red, while Case is engulfed in green light. He takes a deep breath and regains some composure and health. Garkon looks stunned, but then smiles broadly and grabs Case in a deep embrace.
Well fought, my friend. I would fight with you any day.
He pats Case on the shoulder and walks him over to the half-ogre, who is chatting with a bugbear which seems twice the size of Fodinus. The 4 of them engage in a rousing conversation about fighting, winning, and crushing one's opponent for quite a long time. Case receives 350 experience points for defeating an unarmed Minotaur. Umgern finds a marble bench with a large, soft cushion on the edge of the tiers, affording a view of the sunken floor and platforms, and sits to think. He watches with curiosity and delight as his friends move around the platforms. After an hour more or less, a tall, wide figure approaches Umgern. He wears a long red robe and has long white hair. Small enchanted birds flutter around his head. He sits down next to Umgern.
Hello, Umgern. Inelsia told me you wanted to speak with an elder of the temple. I am not always here, but I am here frequently, and I am quite old for a human. In fact, almost twice your age, I believe. There are elves here sometimes who are centuries older than me, some possibly a millennia. But only I am here now. How can I help you?
I am facing another 6 centuries in this world. I am estranged from my people, but I found a calling in my heart and in my mind to serve and protect other people. It's a calling that comes from my understanding and love of what Illustria wants each of us to do with our time here. But very few, almost none of my people share my feelings. So I was wondering, am I wrong? Is there something wrong with me that makes me choose a path of light when my people seem to always choose the dark?
Umgern frowns and looks down at his hands.
We are all put on our paths for different reasons. If I were to tell you my own story and what drives me, you would see that we are not so different, outcasts from our own people. And like you, I am driven to pursue a higher purpose. Do my people respect me? No. Does it move me from my path? No, it does not. But I have found my own people. I have made my own family, and you could consider doing that as well. But you must be conscious of your own mortality and relative immortality compared with your chosen family. Clearly, surrounding yourselves with elves or drow would ensure companions for all of your days, but you, like I, find your own people insufferable. So I, for one, respect your path and believe your family is yours for the making.
The elder concludes his soliloquy and smiles. He stands up, nods, and begins to walk away.
Oh, apologies, Elder. You seem to know my name, but I don't know your name.
The elder stops, turns, and looks back at Umgern.
Well, Umgern, I actually have many names. Siren of Swallows, Feather Friend, the Mercurial Mockingbird. But should you ever need my help, just find a bird and whisper
Hexion
to it, and I'll find you.
The final name burns, reverberates, almost stings Umgern's mind. After Inisel leaves them, Peace and Theophania walk a bit further. Theophania sees several creatures firing arrows from bows. She pats Peace on the shoulder and moves down to the platform. Once there, she finds several goblins, an orc, a Yuan-ti, and a half-elf, all chatting in a circle. Every few seconds, one of them draws an arrow and fires at a magical glowing target hovering on the end of the platform. Theophania can see that the target has several colors, but they seem to shift and move before each creature fires. She smiles and moves closer to the group.
Hi, holy hell! A centaur? Well, that's a sight for sore eyes.
The largest of the goblins moves close to Theophania and pats her on the front leg, runs his hand down her side, and pats her on her rump.
A fine centaur at that. Please excuse Peskek. He is forever sure that every female in the world wants to bed him. I am Kestritz, this is Domrold, and you've met Peskeg.
The 3 goblins bow. The orc extends his hand.
I am Ragdul, my lady, and this is Nuski.
The Yuan-Ti bows.
And that is Panathenus. Who are you, my lady?
Theophania bows deeply to all of them, much lower than any of them can manage.
I am Theophania Blackmane, a ranger of the King of Pathilia and 3rd daughter of Jathind Blackmane. I hail from the Forest of the Dragon's Back in Devonmere to the north.
She smiles and nods.
Ranger? Well, lassie, you've come to the right place.
Piskik slaps her on the rump again and walks over to the target.
Here's how our little platform works, dearie. We all stand over there and discuss the next shot and the conditions. Each person ups the ante of the difficulty. Then, when no one wants to challenge, they take the shot. If they hit, that's 10,000 gold pieces. Kidding, dearie. If they hit, they get 5 points. If they miss, they lose 2 points. After 5 rounds, the person with the most points wins, and they get to dip 1 arrow in the well of Eldir.
Piskik points to a basin of glowing light on the corner of the platform.
And what does that do?
Theophania looks derisively at Piskik.
That, my dear lady, imbues the arrow with magic. But trust me, it's not easy to win, because ties are not allowed. If the 5 rounds end in a tie, we have to start over.
Piskik laughs a groggy, throaty laugh with several snorts.
Well, how many have you won today?
Theophania looks around curiously.
Just me.
Domrold holds up an arrow. Theophania takes the arrow from him and inspects it.
Theophania makes an Arcana check with advantage. Rolls 18.
Wow, this arrow is magically enhanced to strike better and do more damage.
The group nods at her.
All right, let's do it.
Let's make the first shot easy. I can hit a standard bullseye.
Piskig folds his arms.
I can hit a bullseye that is half a size.
Domrold rebuts, arms folded.
I can hit a half-size bullseye that is moving the whole target.
Rogdal smirks and folds his arms.
I can hit a quarter-sized bullseye that is moving around the target's face clockwise while the whole target is moving.
Nusky smiles and hisses, her tongue flitting out quickly. Theophania thinks she has the hang of it.
I will hit a single dot the size of a ladybug with no target moving in a random pattern.
Theophania smiles. The others gasp and look over at the target, which has been responding to each of their challenges, to see a small red dot buzzing in a random pattern all over the target area. They all unfold their arms, bow, and step back. Theophania draws her bow, notches an arrow, follows the dot for a few seconds, and fires.
Theophania rolls a longbow attack, DC 20. Rolls 22.
The arrow flies across the platform and strikes the dot, dead center, causing the dot and the arrow to vanish. Theophania finds the arrow in her hand again.
5 points. Incredible.
Piskek moves next to Theophania and puts his hand on her front leg, patting it gently.
Piskek, I just hit a randomly moving dot at 50 paces with an arrow. I also have short swords.
Theophania increases the derision in her face and stares.
Theophania makes an intimidation check versus Piskek's insight check. Rolls a 3 versus 0.
Piskek quickly removes his hand and moves to the back of the group, his face slightly purple.
Theophania rolls 5 ranged attacks versus DC 20. Rolls 27 critical, 19, 20, 20, and 16. 3 successes and 2 failures.
Theophania continues the archery competition with the 6 others for quite a while and eventually wins. More importantly, she enjoys the non-stop banter, conversation, carousing, and eventually warms up to Piskig, who doesn't touch her again but pays her lots of compliments. As she is preparing to leave, Piskig tugs her tail and smiles.
I have a gift for you, milady.
He hands her a very fine leather saddle bag. She smiles and places it across her back and secures it with the 2 leather buckles underneath.
Thank you, Pisskeg.
She leans down and gives the goblin a kiss on the top of his head. He squeals and does a little dance while making his way back to the other archers.
Theophania receives 1 + 1 arrow, a set of fine leather saddlebags, and 200 experience points.
Alone, Peace continues to follow the path around the tiers and sees what looks like a small library with a writing desk on one of them very close to the base of the large red crystal. They saunter down to the platform and look around. There doesn't appear to be anyone else on this platform. 2 of the edges are bookshelves packed with books. The writing desk faces the red crystal and has stacks of parchment, quills, and ink. On the other side of the writing desk is a large circle filled with sigils and markings.
Peace makes an Arcana check, rolls 8.
The circle looks like something magical, but Peace is unsure of what it is. Peace sits at the desk, pulls a piece of parchment towards them, and picks up a quill. They again look at the circle, and their quill nib falls to the paper accidentally. With a flourish, the quill seems to move rapidly around the paper and reproduces the symbols on the floor perfectly.
Peace makes a wisdom check, rolls 12.
Peace pulls over another piece of parchment. With the nib just above the paper, they think about the fight with the kobolds, the device, the explosions, and the dragon. They finally form a clear first thought and place the nib to the paper. Instantly, a full, verbose version of the events in the tunnel fills the page, and a second page slides over from the stack and is filled just as quickly. The parchment pieces continue sliding over until 8 of them are filled with writing. Peace puts the quill down and reads through the 8 pages swiftly. The style and language of the prose is exactly as they would have done it. There are no errors, no mark-throughs, no corrections.
Peace makes a perception check, rolls 20.
They put down the pages and go to the bookshelf. None of the books have titles as the spines are blank. They select a fine book with a pale green soft leather and pull it from the shelf. They open it and at once the pages from the desk fly over and embed themselves into the book as if they were printed there.
Peace makes an intelligence check, rolls 6.
Peace scratches their head, then returns to the table with the book. They open their bag and remove all of the loose pieces of parchment and place them on the desk. They pull out Poets of Southern Engedrian, Poetry of Nature by Pebble on the Grass, History of Engedrian, and their own journal of writings, poems, and thoughts. Peace picks up the light green leather-bound book and opens it. All of the pages of parchment with their notes fly up off the desk and into the journal. All 4 books float into the air swiftly and dive down into the book, which closes and lays on the desk. In gold foil writing on the cover of the light green journal, it now says, Piece of the Puzzles, Book of Books. They open the book and see a page labeled Peace's Notes. They flip the page and see the cover of A History of Engedrian. They flip the page again and see Poetry by Nature. Peace turns their head slightly left and right, then touches the cover of the poetry book.
Peace makes a wisdom check, rolls 21.
Their finger slides over the cover and the book vibrates just a bit. They open it and now see the pages of Poetry by Nature in its entirety. They drop the book, it closes and reverts back to the light green version. They open it again, flip to the cover of Poets of Southern Engedrian, run their finger down the page, and the book vibrates and becomes the poetry book. Peace squeals with glee. They spend a moment thinking about all they have written to date since their arrival in Engedrian and all of the experiences of their childhood not yet written. They begin pulling parchment over in front of them, forming very clear thoughts about an event or idea and touching the nib to the page. Parchment flies over until it's finished. Peace opens the book of books and the pages fly inside and embed themselves. They clap their paws together and laugh. They continue recounting events of their life, their experience, their thoughts, their hopes, and their dreams for a very long time.
Peace acquires a book of books.
Umgarn eventually smiles to himself and stands up as well. He sees Malage as closest and walks over to join him. Malage is on a platform many steps down, observing a large sphere which appears to be made of fire. Malage is touching the sphere, and the flames inside appear to be drawn to his hands.
Then anything new, Malage?
Malage jumps, startled by Umgarn's voice, and smirks.
Not really. But this sphere seems to respond to my Genasi nature. I can control and manipulate the flames inside the sphere in any way that I like.
As he says this, the flames form a perfectly smooth cube, then fold inward and outward to form a ring of fire made of tetrahedrons.
It makes me feel more powerful, but it also calms me.
Malaysia removes his hands and joins Umgurn on the steps, heading up. Coming down the stairs towards them are 4 drow, led by a 5th female drow wearing a long, dark purple dress covered by a black leather tunic. Her hair is up high on the top of her head in a tight bun.
Vindui vlas ogalind, ustan zahas dela nindel dos sin serenil, ulu talent zul udaso?
The female drow places her hands on her hips and cocks her head to the side. Umgurn speaks in common to include Malaysia in the exchange.
I am Umgurn Luthra, hailing from Azalzil, a paladin of Illustrai, Our Lady of the Moon.
He extends his left hand with his index and ring finger bent in, palm up. The female drow smirks, then extends her left hand, index and ring finger bent, palm down. They join their hands, their fingers close, and they gently shake.
I am Rarina Maith of Lona, a warlock. Blessed is my patron.
She releases his hand, and her look of derision returns.
You have, no doubt, seen the large tunnel north of here, and possibly the tunneling device.
Umgurn folds his arms in front of him.
That? Yes, I'm aware of it. It would be impossible to not know about it.
She smiles nonchalantly.
Why are a horde of goblins with a dragon attended by kobolds burrowing through the Underdark?
Umgurn's voice is firm and authoritative, causing the drow to stand up a bit straighter.
All that I know of, but keep in mind I'm not really in charge. All I know is that they are looking for some metals and got permission to mine in the Underdark. I'm sure there was some form of payment.
She looks off to the left, somewhat bored with the discussion.
And what if I told you that I think that they are not mining for metals, but are digging a tunnel from Sentinelfuse to invade Pathilia from below?
He adjusts his arms and looks more sternly at her.
And why would drow be concerned with surface dwellers and their disagreements?
Ustan Fon Ilithiri, Ustan Zan Velboldasta, Viodias Lak Forgel Dikanas, Lindier Aban.
Malaysia looks curiously at Umgurn and his sudden switch to Undercommon.
The final ally, yes. It's an outdated concept. The future of the drow is the drow. We don't need any surface dwellers.
She looks sternly at Umgurn and refolds her arms tightly.
Good. Then, if that tunneling team is, in fact, digging a tunnel for Sentinelfuse to invade Pathilia, would you want them to succeed, or would you want the drow to prevent such an incursion on our land?
Umgurn pauses, and she chews on her lip for a moment.
We destroyed the tunneling device and its crew.
Well, then it sounds like the problem is solved.
She adjusts her arms nervously, refolding them one over another, and stands up a bit more attentive.
No. We destroyed the device and its crew, but the tunnel goes back to its origin. We need to close it, but we need to preserve the integrity of the Underdark. The tunneling has driven Underdark creatures to the surface. We need to return to the surface and close those eruptions, but the tunnel needs to be collapsed carefully down here, especially the distant sections. Can you help us?
Umgurn remains stern.
Umgurn makes an intimidation check and a persuasion check versus the drow's wisdom saving throw. Rolls 13 and 13 versus a 19 and a 7.
The female drow stands up a bit taller and rears her shoulders back a bit.
I am not afraid of you, blood trader, but I do see the logic of your plan. We are 5 of a group of 20 drow who live in Lona, south of the tunnel-digging invaders. Lona is, as far as we know, the only drow city that has been affected by the tunneling. We stopped them when they first came into the tunnels near Lona. They showed us some mining contracts in Draconic that seemed legitimate, but none of us actually speak Draconic.
Malaysia steps forward and awkwardly pulls the 3 hook horror eggs from his bag and places them at the feet of the female drow. She smiles devilishly for the briefest instant and then releases a long, slow sigh.
What do you want us to do?
Malaysia smiles up at Umgurn, who gives him a "that was not necessary but thank you" look. Umgurn moves them all back to the top, finds Case, and motions him to join them. Case and Umgurn spend the better part of an hour going through the maps and the tunnel route, cross-referencing the eruptions. The drow listens carefully and marks additional notes on Case's map. Umgurn is finally satisfied with the plan to close the tunnel from below and the eruptions above. The drow confirm that they have access to dynamite in sufficient quantity to blow the tunnel. Umgurn shakes the hands of the drow and makes a plan to meet up with them at the base of their last eruption to confirm the job is done.
Umgurn and Malaysia receive 150 experience points.
The party, having enjoyed the fruits of the temple, eventually gather at the archway entrance. They feel well rested and full. Enelsia appears and meets them.
I hope you have enjoyed your time in the Hall of Narvandor. You are welcome to return any time.
Enelsia, where do the other archways go?
Malaysia points at a few of them.
Yes, that is a fascinating question, with even a more fascinating answer, little one. I noticed your bugbear friend studying them. This is a temple at crossroads. You may have heard of the city of Sigil. This temple is not unlike the city of Sigil, though they have no relationship. If you were to go through any of the other archways, you would be in a completely different world, not Angedrian. We have several elders here who have explored each of the doors. I myself have been through a few of them.
Enelsia smiles and pulls a small scroll from inside her robe.
You are an inquisitive one, Malaysia. This is a short scroll that summarizes the destination of those portals. I think you will find it most interesting.
With that, she turns and walks back into the temple. Malaysia opens the scroll immediately and reads through the colors of the portals, the names, and the brief descriptions.
Malaysia makes an intelligence check and a history check. Rolls 12 and 17.
I have never heard of any of these except for the Feywild and the Shadowfell. Peace, we'll need to hit the library again and maybe the other library when we get back to Pathelia.
Umgurn clears his throat and gets everyone's attention.
We will need to exit the temple and head as quickly as possible back to the eruption and to the surface. From the surface, we will move to each eruption and close them from above. The drow will close off the sections of the tunnel they can from below. They will meet us at the last eruption in 5 days. Hopefully they can tell us that tunnel is closed.
Umgurn sighs and looks out of the archway.
But Umgurn, what will keep the goblins from just making another drilling machine and coming back?
Malaysia stares up at the paladin.
I have much to tell you about that tunnel. Perhaps in that knowledge, a permanent solution can be found.
Inesel quickly recounts her visions from the tree and the red, poisonous scar that ends in the mountains. Umgurn pulls out a map and looks at it carefully, conferring with Inesel.
It may not be clear from this map, but Centelfius is physically connected to Pathilias across the southern polar cap. The cap itself is almost entirely impassable frozen mountains, but before the arms of the dragon, there are the Tangle Wastes. It's an uninhabited, dare I say uninhabitable stretch of polar desert. I do not think they would have tunneled across that expanse. But here in the cell, where you have indicated, this is in the high mountains above the frozen southern expanse of the East Mornwood. Those forests are home to deadly creatures of frost and ice that rarely venture into the warmth above. If the forces of Centelfius found a way to breach these woods into the mountains, no one would have seen them. We must get this information to the king.
Rowena explained, before her party departed the temple earlier, that the Underdark west of Omlona was mostly empty because of the temple and fear of retribution from the temple elders for causing any trouble. The 3 drow they had run into were Rowena's people, and she would speak to them and the rest of her clan when they returned to Omlona so that the party could pass quickly back to the eruption without interference from the drow. She could not prevent any other creatures of the Underdark from bothering them, however. Umgurn leads his party back to the eruption as quickly as he can, which is still a 3-hour journey.
The party makes stealth checks. Rolls 12, 13, 13, 26, 10, 18, and 10.
Having come this way before, and now having their sense of what they need to see and navigate, the party remains very silent and moves swiftly. Fodinas is so silent and quick that Umgurn cannot keep track of him. He appears every half hour or so next to Umgurn and tells him about the tunnel ahead, but nothing important is seen. After 3 hours, they find themselves at the site of the first eruption. Umgren nods to everyone in satisfaction, and they begin the many-mile climb up the shaft to the surface. When they are halfway up the eruption tunnel, Malaysia, following close to Umgren, tugs on his pants leg and whispers quietly,
These eruptions are quite long. What could make an underdark creature burrow so much?
Umgren looks back at the fire genasi, whose head flickers with a bright glow for Inicel and Theophania to follow.
Umgren makes a nature check with advantage. Familiarity with the Underdark. Rolls 16.
I don't think it's many different creatures of the Underdark, Malaysia. I think it is only the Kruthic and possibly bullets that have dug these tunnels. Those creatures have an incredibly sensitive organ for tremors in the earth. That tunneling device was cutting through rock and stone. I'm sure it was driving them crazy and causing them stress. The other creatures likely just followed the tunnels up as an easy escape from the tunneling noise and got lost or confused on the surface.
Umgren smiles reassuringly at the little genasi as they continue climbing. After a long while, the party emerges from the eruption into the failing light of early evening. Umgren relates to the group that they have been down in the Underdark for at least several days.
The poor horses!
Theophania bolts towards the camp with Inicel following closely behind. By the time the rest of the party arrives at the wagon and cart, Theophania has fed and watered the horses, and Inicel is casting spells on them while rubbing them down with a coarse brush. Theophania gives Umgren a positive look and nod to suggest that the horses were okay. Malaysia begins heating up the remaining dragon meat and adding some vegetables to a pot of salted water to make a stew.
Malaysia uses 10 pounds of cooked dragon meat.
The rest of the party takes some time to unpack all of their gear, check it, repack items in the wagon and cart, and then settle in for a meal and some sleep.
The party takes a long rest.
As Isvara rises, the party awakens from a peaceful night of sleep. They gather for breakfast, and Malaysia explains what he thinks they should do for each of the 6 eruptions.
We have 10 sticks of dynamite remaining, which means 2 per eruption, except for the last one. The drow should have sufficient dynamite to close that one. The dirt and soil towards the last mile of the eruption tunnel is loose and soft, unlike the dense stone below. If we place 1 stick of dynamite a few hundred feet down, and a second stick halfway to the top, that should collapse all of the dirt and rocks on this end. The drow can seal the other ends with several sticks about 100 feet up. The middle part should just seal over time with the settling of the ground. But once we collapse the tunnels, we have to seal the eruption here as best we can. In the cell, do you think you can find some bears and have them help you move 24 large boulders here so we can drop them in the eruptions?
Malaysia pauses and looks at Inicel, who smiles, a toothy grin. She transforms into a large brown bear, waves, and vanishes into the woods.
Right. Let's do it.
Within an hour, the charges are set and Malaysia ignites them. The explosions are muffled by the hundreds of tons of earth above them, but the party feels the ground shift and settle. Malaysia looks down into the eruption and, as expected, the tunnel is closed about 100 feet down. 4 brown bears rolling boulders in front of them appear from the woods and begin pushing the boulders into the hole. After 3 rounds, the last boulder sticks partially out of the ground. Inicel runs back into the woods with the bears and then returns a few minutes later, back to herself.
Well, that's one done.
Malaysia seems very proud that his plan has worked so well and beams. Umgren gives him a brief hug and nods.
It is about a half-day's journey to the next eruption. Let's get moving.
The next 4 days finds the party repeating this process for each eruption with little difficulty. The only challenging site is the one deep in the cave, but the dynamite causes the cave to shatter and the hole collapses and fills with stone, removing the need for the bears. On the morning of the 5th day, the party approaches the last eruption, which is the one south of the road and on the edge of the East Mornwood. Inicel is happy to see one of her favorite forests up close again. A herd of deer running along the clearing next to the forest makes Theophania smile and sigh. They find the eruption easily, just where it was marked by Inicel and Theophania.
The party make perception checks. Roll 8, 13, 9, 6, 14, 6, and 20.
As they approach the eruption, Inicel and Umgren get a faint scent they cannot quite place, which is present for a moment and then seems to pass. Peace stops short of the eruption and motions for the party to be quiet and hold. They creep closely to the eruption and peer over the edge. Nothing is visible, but a very strong and peculiar smell emanates from the hole. Peace returns to the party.
I don't know what it is, but there is a very strong and strange smell down there. And so, any easy way to scout this quietly?
Peace mimics Inicel growing horns or shrinking. Inicel chuckles.
I have just the thing.
She shrinks quickly to a small cave badger, nips Peace's boot as she walks by, and then disappears down the hole.
Inicel makes a perception check, advantage for smells, rolls a 24.
Inside the hole and barreling down the existing tunnel, Inicel smells the odor very easily and knows that it is a mixture of blood, filth, and gore. The smell is faint, but she is sure something has been slaughtered far below. After traveling for half an hour, she picks up the smell of kobolds, goblins, and hobgoblins that she recognizes from their previous encounter, though these do not smell as crispy. There is another smell that she cannot place, something acrid and bitter. She pauses, turns around, and bolts back to the surface. As she emerges from the eruption, she transforms back into herself.
It is more of them, Umgern. Definitely kobolds, goblins, and hobgoblins, and something else. I am worried your drow friends may be in trouble.
Inicel pauses and looks back at the hole.
Secure everything here you don't need for a battle. Travel as lightly as you can. Malays, alarm the wagons and carts and horses. Hide them at the edge of the forest. We must hurry down to meet with this fowl before it's too late.
The party scrambles quickly at Umgern's orders to secure everything they can, and Malage performs the rituals to alarm the goods and the horses with a loud whooping alarm that also emanates the scent of wolves. Once he's done, he turns towards the eruption where the rest of the party waits, looking down into the hole. Less than an hour later, the party has reached the bottom of the eruption as the Underdark, so close to the mountains, is much closer to the surface. Unlike the other eruptions where the tunnel leading up joined directly with the burrowed tunnel of the invaders, this eruption base appears to be level 2 but adjacent to the tunnel with a few twisted walls blocking the direct view of the invaders' tunnel. At the foot of the eruption tunnel, they see the body of a drow which has been stripped of flesh and disemboweled. Inicel looks at everyone and motions her claw to her mouth and chewing. They ate this one. The party shudders and Umgern stoops down to look at the body. It is a male drow. He sighs and stands.
The party makes perception checks, rolls 8, 26 critical, 6, 7, 14, 8, and 9.
Inicel jerks her head quickly and leans very close to everyone so their heads are as close as possible.
They are just outside of this alcove. I can hear them breathing, and the clink of their armor is echoing slightly. If they knew we were here, we would be dead already. I'm going to transform into a spider and go take a look.
Everyone nods, and she shrinks quickly to a small brown spider and vanishes over some rocks. The party stands perfectly still and waits with growing apprehension. After only a few minutes, Inicel rises from the floor where she stood before and sighs.
It's not good. To the right, there are 2 kobolds, 2 goblins, and a hobgoblin. They are next to 4 drow, who appear to be unconscious. To the left, there's another hobgoblin, 2 of those armored kobolds, and a dragon.
The party seems to clench their teeth and suck in their breath all at once.
It's just a wormling, but it's black. There's no device that I can see. I think this is just a patrol. Thoughts?
The party makes intelligence checks, rolls 5, 11, 7, 4, 2, 19, and 7.
The party seems perplexed out of fear or uncertainty or both, except for Theophania, who looks up from the clustered heads of her party, smirks, and puts her head back down.
We will only get one chance to surprise them when we emerge, and we will need to do something that disables them or kills them immediately. Inicel, can you cast Entangle or some similar spell?
I can cast a spell that will entrap their feet in thorns, make it difficult for them to move, and hurt them if they do.
Perfect. Our unconscious drow friends should be okay if they don't move. Malage, I hate to ask this of you, but I think you need to throw one of your fireballs at that dragon.
Theophania looks at Malage with concern, remembering the last fireball in the tunnel.
How big is this tunnel, Inicel?
Malage seems to be calculating in his mind.
It is much the same as before, I'm afraid. It's a 20-foot diameter tunnel.
She smiles, assuming the information will please Malage.
Damn.
Case looks at Malage with concern, and Fodinus grabs his shoulder and stares.
When I throw it, it will have to get at least 60 feet down that tunnel before it explodes. Otherwise, the flashback will fill the tunnel. and this space.
Malaysia sighs.
Then you'll just have to throw accurately.
Peace pats the Genasi on the shoulder and smiles reassuringly.
Okay, then what?
Malaysia seems encouraged.
Then we charge them and attack.
Theophania stands tall and looks sternly at the small exit for the eruption cavity. The party arranges themselves in the small space as quietly as possible so that Inicel and Malaysia are just inside the entrance. Because she has already seen the tunnel, Inicel does not need to step into the tunnel to cast her spell, but Malaysia must move far enough in to make his throw. Case stands directly behind him to pull him back from an attack. Inicel and Malaysia look at each other one last time, and then Inicel begins casting.
Inicel casts Spike Growth.
Within seconds, the spiked growth springs up around the kobolds and the goblin, but as they are not moving, they do not yet notice. Malaysia pokes his head and arm out of the tunnel enough to see, and then hurls the bead to cast the fireball.
Malaysia makes a ranged attack, targeting a point 60 feet from his location. Disadvantage distance. Rolls 17.
The bauble sails through the air, past the hobgoblin and kobolds who are speaking with the dragon, over the back of the dragon, and strikes its mark 60 feet from Malaysia. Case snatches Malaysia back into the tunnel. The fireball explodes.
4 creatures make Dex saving throws, DC 15. Fireball damage 28. Saves 6, 12, 6, and 21. 3 fails and 1 save.
The burst of flames illuminates the tunnel to the left with a roar, and the creatures on the right scream and back up 5 feet, causing the thorny terrain to tear into them.
Spike Growth damage. Rolls 5 piercing damage. Everyone rolls for initiative. Inicel moves into the tunnel, casts Produce Flame, makes a ranged attack against Goblin B. Rolls 15 versus AC 15 for a hit for 3 fire damage.
Inicel rushes into the tunnel, facing right, and hurls a ball of flame at a goblin standing within her thorny growth next to what appear to be 2 unconscious kobolds. The ball of flame strikes it in the face, and it falls. Beyond it, the hobgoblin and goblin scream.
Fodinus moves 30 feet into the tunnel, makes 2 dagger attacks at the black dragon wormling. Assassinate, Sneak, Surprise, and Critical. Rolls 11 and 11.
Fodinus charges into the tunnel, turns left, and hurls both of his daggers directly at the black reptile, which ducks and weaves, sending the daggers clattering behind it.
Peace moves 30 feet into the tunnel, makes a thrown spear attack against Kobold Dragonshield B. Rolls 13 for a miss.
Peace follows Fodinus, and as they turn the corner, hurls their spear directly at an armored kobold closest to the left, but it deflects the spear with its shield, clattering to the ground.
Theophania moves 30 feet into the tunnel, casts Hail of Thorns, attacks Black Dragon Wormling with longbow, Hordebreaker attack on Kobold Dragonshield. Rolls 22 for 5 damage and 5 Hail of Thorns damage. 3 creatures make DC 15 dexterity saving throws. Roll 8, 11, and 6. 3 fails. Hordebreaker rolls 10 for a miss.
Theophania gallops into the tunnel and turns left, murmuring arcane words that cause her arrow to illuminate with small green thorns, and fires an arrow at the dragon, striking it in the shoulder. The arrow explodes in a rain of magical thorns that tear into the dragon and the armored kobolds. She notches another arrow at the closest kobold, but the arrow goes wild and shatters against the tunnel wall.
Hobgoblin B moves into Spiked Growth, makes a longbow attack at Peace, takes 10 piercing damage, rolls a 4 for a miss.
The hobgoblin that was guarding the drow charges toward the party and right through the spiked growth, which tears into the flesh of its legs. Screaming in pain, it attempts to fire its longbow at Peace, but shoots the arrow into the ceiling, unable to concentrate from the profuse bleeding.
Malaysia moves 20 feet into the tunnel, faces right, creates Eldritch Cannon, Flamethrower, bonus action, fires at Hobgoblin B. Rolls 9 fire damage. Hobgoblin B rolls an 18 dex saving throw versus 14. Saves, takes 4 fire damage.
Malaysia enters the tunnel and faces the hobgoblin. He conjures a small cannon-like device that has 4 legs and points it at the hobgoblin. He activates the cannon and a cone of fire erupts around the hobgoblin, killing it instantly.
Kobold Dragonshield A moves into melee with Fodinus, makes 2 spear attacks with advantage, Pack Tactics, rolls 19 and 20 for 2 hits, doing 6 piercing damage.
The armored kobold charges towards Fodinas and stabs him viciously with his spear, striking him in the chest and arm.
Kobold Dragon Shield B moves into melee with Theophania, makes 2 spear attacks with advantage, pack tactics, rolls a 20 and 18 for 2 hits, doing 7 piercing damage.
Another armored kobold charges towards Theophania and stabs at her rapidly with his spear, piercing her in the stomach and shoulder.
Goblin A attacks with a short bow, targeting Malage, rolls 21 for a hit for 3 piercing damage.
The goblin guarding the drow notches an arrow in his short bow and fires it at Malage in response to his flaming cannon, striking the genasi in the shoulder.
Black Dragon Wormling flies 40 feet, lands inside tunnel, attacks Case with a bite, rolls a 22 for 9 piercing damage and 2 acid damage.
The small black dragon takes flight over the party and lands in the entrance to the eruption tunnel. Case is standing there and the dragon snaps at him with a nasty acid bite, crunching into his forearm.
Umgren moves into melee with Black Dragon Wormling, makes 2 scimitar attacks, rolls 23 for 8 slashing damage and 13 for a miss.
Umgren dashes around the corner, now face to face with the small black dragon. He slashes it across the face with his scimitar on a downswing, then brings it up with his second swipe, but it clatters across the beast's teeth.
Case manifests an echo next to the dragon, takes an action surge, unleashes manifestation twice, attempting 4 unarmed punches at the Black Dragon Wormling, rolls a 26 crit for 10 bludgeoning damage and a 26 crit for 9 bludgeoning damage.
Case, enraged by the appearance of the black dragon before him, bumps his fists together, throws back his shoulders in a roar, passes his claws across his palms, and then prepares to unleash 4 punches. The first punch, however, strikes the dragon in the throat with a crunch, sending it falling to the tunnel floor. Case charges past the fallen dragon to the armored kobold for a second punch, striking it in the chest.
Inacel moves 10 feet towards Goblin A, casts Produce Flame, makes a ranged attack at Goblin A, rolls 14 for a miss.
Inacel moves closer to the goblin with the short bow and hurls a ball of flame at it, but the creature dodges to the left and the ball explodes harmlessly on the tunnel wall.
Fodinas attacks Kobold Dragon Shield A with 2 short sword attacks, rolls a 15 for 8 piercing damage and a 17 for 7 piercing damage.
Fodina's short swords slash at the armored kobold in front of him, gashing the creature's throat in both directions and sending its head flying backwards down the tunnel.
Peace attacks Kobold Dragon Shield with a dart, rolls 12 for a miss.
Peace hurls a dart at the kobold in front of Theophania, but it plinks off the creature's shield.
Theophania makes 2 short sword attacks on Kobold Dragon Shield B, rolls 12 for a miss and 16 for a hit for 4 piercing damage.
Theophania, angered by the stab to her shoulder, slashes the kobold with her short swords, the second swipe cutting it across the chest and causing it to collapse.
Malage casts Firebolt at Goblin A, rolls 7 for a miss.
Malage launches a blast of fire from his hand at the last enemy standing, but it deflects off his shoulder harness harmlessly.
Goblin A attacks Malage with his short bow, rolls 10 for a miss.
The goblin that dodged the firebolt from Malage now launches an arrow which goes wide and sinks into the tunnel wall.
Umgren moves 30 feet into the tunnel, attacks Goblin A with his hand crossbow, disadvantage distance, rolls a 14 for a miss.
Umgren dashes into the tunnel and turns to fire at the last creature, but the distance is too great and his shot misses wide to the right.
Case moves his echo next to Goblin A, bonus action teleports, attacks Goblin A with unarmed strike, rolls a 20 for 8 bludgeoning damage.
Case's echo slides across the spiked growth terrain to appear next to the goblin, who stares at it with a curiosity and fear. Case suddenly teleports from the other side and delivers a lethal blow to the goblin's neck, killing it instantly.
Each party member receives 200 experience points.
Thank you for visiting Engedrian. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for additional content, battle maps, and background details. We hope you're enjoying our adventure. We can't wait to hear what happens next.